So outside of the Danish design, the JAMO speaker line offers a lot in terms of attractiveness, mostly due to its price tag. JAMO speakers are very cheap. In fact, if they're good, they offer an incredible value. And I think one of the bigger questions for this lineup from JAMO is this a good speaker at a cheap price, or is it a cheap speaker at an expensive price? And that's what I aim to uncover in the upcoming reviews of both of these. But today I want to talk about them, kind of my initial thoughts on them. So I bought two sets. One is going to be the towers right there, which are the 807s, which have dual 5-inch woofers in each of them, then a 1-inch dome tweeter, of course, and they're in these kind of mini towers. And then I have the 801s back there, which are not the more popular 803s, but the reason why I picked the 801s is because I'm going to be adding a subwoofer to that system and comparing the 2.1 speaker system to the towers and seeing which provides a better result. And because the 803s are a little bit more expensive, they would have brought the price difference up even more than it already will be. The 2.1 system is actually going to be a little bit more expensive. Now the prices for everything are kind of weird because I'll tell you the prices that I got them at, and then we'll talk about the prices in general with this. So the 801s, the bookshelves, were $199. The 807s, the towers, were $285 for a pair, which is crazy. And it's a lot of speaker, and for just $100 more, actually less than that, for $100 more than those bookshelves, you get a pretty incredible package in comparison in total tangible goods. Then the subwoofer, which was the 808, was $176. So that's going to bring the total cost of that up to about $376, so basically $400 with taxes and everything. And the towers are going to be about $300, so not exactly apples to apples, but still maybe I can direct somebody's budget towards what they should get based off of what sounds a little bit better. So about the prices in general, this is something that JAMO seems to fluctuate quite a lot, especially on the kind of marketplace sellers like Amazon. I see these things hop up and down. For example, I actually got a fairly good deal on the 807s, but I didn't get a good deal on the 801s. I've seen those, I think, down to $150 if I'm not mistaken, but I've seen the 807s up to $500. So getting them sub $300 is pretty good, even though that's kind of right around where they're supposed to actually be selling for. So when you're looking at this, if you're clicking in the links down below, if they're significantly higher prices than what I'm talking about, they're probably either running out of stock or they've just done their fluctuation for whatever reason. So I would just bookmark it if it's expensive and just keep checking every week or so and just purchase it when it's the ideal price for you. Now beyond that, there are a couple differences in the systems. The 807s are Atmos pass-through capable, so they have these little 4-pin systems that a lot of companies like ELAC and Klipsch are using, which, side note, JAMO is Danish inspired, but it is a Klipsch company. But those and the more popular bookshelves, the 803s, which are a bit bigger than those 801s, do have that Atmos capable pass-through that you have to buy a separate module that's going to shoot up towards the ceiling to reflect sound down to simulate kind of top-down Atmos. So that is a little bit of what you're paying for there if you want that feature. Now the 801s are not capable of that. They do not have the pins in them. Now these systems really offer an incredible value, specifically that tower. A $300 tower. All the cheap towers that I personally have heard that are new and not like used towers that are, selling at a quarter or a third of the original asking price. All of them, they all have glaring issues. They all have glaring problems. And I'm not saying that these are going to be exempt of any problems, and they're certainly not. No speaker is, but they all seemingly have major fallbacks, and it's usually either a lack of bass or the plain resolution is not all that good, or more audiophile things like imaging and Soundstage is particularly poor. So jumping into this, I'm expecting some small setbacks, but I'm hoping that there's no glaring issues, because that's been kind of the setback of cheaper gear from what I have seen in the past. Notably though, you can pick up some really good used equipment for around this price that used to sell for a lot more, and those usually can sound fantastic. So when it comes to the 801s, you have your tweeter and your 4-inch woofer in the front. These are not front ported like a lot of the other JAMO speakers. The slot port is in the back, which actually makes for a pretty good handle if you need to take these with you. And as you can see, there's no pass-throughs, but there is an ability to wall mount it if you want. Now these specifically are actually more popularly sold in sets that JAMO sells of like a speaker system where they have the center channel, usually the 803s, and then a pair of 801s, and they're usually meant to be kind of rear channel speakers. Now there's not to say that that's their only purpose, but the 803s are generally supposed to be a little bit better. But given the price point of what we want to do here, this fit my purposes a little bit better, and certain people may not want to pay the extra 40 bucks for a slightly bigger speaker. So one thing to note here is the shape of this makes it so that pictures and videos are going to make it seem kind of big. Something about the height factor and the slimness and the shape of the actual cabinet, which we'll talk about in just a sec, makes it so that this seems like a large speaker. It's not. It's actually a fairly small, pretty compact bookshelf speaker, especially in the depth department. It's not very deep at all. Now, one thing you might be able to notice here is that it's actually a tapered shape. So it's about a 1/2 inch wider in the back than it is in the front. And it's not something you would immediately pick up on, but once you notice it, you do kind of start to appreciate it a little bit because it does look pretty cool. Now the 807s have dual 5-inch woofers, so they've got quite a bit more horsepower behind them. It's a ported cabinet, port in the front, and then like a long stem down to the port. Again, they have those pass-throughs on the back, and then they kind of had the Atmos landing pad on the top. Now these are what I would consider to be kind of smallish towers. They're not super tall, they're not super heavy. They're going to be good for kind of medium listening environments in terms of like the scale of them and the size of them and what they're able to produce in terms of sound and volume. And really the cabinet is kind of just like an extended, slightly larger version of the 801s and the 803s. It's just taller and a little bit wider and a little bit deeper. It does have some metal feet that screw into the bottom, and those feet actually make the stance look kind of cool, and it kind of raises it off your floor a little bit to give it a little bit more isolation. Now in terms of the fit and finish of both, these are my first time seeing these in person here. I've seen them at stores and stuff like that, but I haven't seen them in person. And the fit and finish is okay. They're both pretty lightweight for what they are. So they're not super solid feeling. Now they are vinyl wrapped, as everybody knows, but you can really tell, especially along the edges of each speaker, there's like these slight white lines on all the edges, so you can definitely tell it's vinyl wrapped. And unfortunately with vinyl, it usually starts to peel, and there's even some small bits here and there that are starting to peel already, and I just got these. Now this is unlikely to get significantly worse unless you move your speakers very often, but most people don't do that, so peeling is not usually an issue, but it is a potential concern over a painted cabinet or a cabinet made of real wood rather than fake wood. Now briefly, I want to touch on the sound a little bit here and talk about two main things. One is going to be the frequency response that I'm picking up so far, and the Soundstage. So the frequency response, right now, these both seem like V-shaped speakers. And I don't think that V-shape is going to get any better with the 801s when I introduce a subwoofer to it. I have moved them around in a couple orientations in my front room, and I can't seem to get around this V-shape. It seems a little bit thin in the mid-range and a little bit backed up, especially for those bookshelves. Now, the 807s adjust that a little bit. The mid-range definitely has a lot more presence, but ultimately it's still a relatively V-shaped speaker, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing. Even expensive V-shaped speakers can be very pleasant to listen to and very enjoyable to listen to. But you kind of have to measure the quality of each of those parts rather than just the general frequency response to kind of make a decision about which one is right for you and whether or not it's a good speaker. And that's what the review, of course, is going to be about. Now, the Soundstage, though, is impressive. In fact, it's shockingly good. I was kind of taken aback by the 801's ability to throw things back. I got those a couple days before I got the 807s, and I hooked them up. And I was admittedly very taken aback at its capability of throwing things behind the speaker and to the sides of the speaker. Now, you're still getting a kind of V-shaped sound signature. It is V-shaped, you know, it's not real low in the low end, obviously. It's just a 4-inch woofer, but it still was able to throw that soundstage far back. So that was pretty impressive. And then again, I got more impressed when the 807 showed up and they were able to even further that capability. So there definitely seems to be a JAMO house sound so far between these two units. And I'd say it's a little bit V-shaped. Not the most V-shaped thing I've ever heard in the world, but there's definitely a bias there. And then the Soundstage. Soundstage is pretty exceptional from what I've heard, especially for $300 for the towers. It's pretty good. And I noticed that the Soundstage is pretty dexterous too. So I had them both up against the wall where I think they're going to end up ultimately being placed in a lot of people's homes. And then I had them kind of 6 feet off the back wall. And the Soundstage for both performances was honestly pretty excellent. So yeah, I think that's where I'm going to leave this first impressions, and let me know any comments or questions you guys have in the comment section down below, and I'll see if I can get to it in the review, and maybe it'll be something that I cover there. Okay, guys, thank you very much for watching. You'll find links to everything in the description down below, as well as Patreon, and Patreon helped make this possible. So thank you guys very much over on Patreon.